Welcome back. It's still the special live coverage of Ghana's 2024 general elections, and as Ghanaians head to the polls, the stakes are high, and the next 4 years, well, that hangs in a balance. Our focus today is on the theme Manifestos and also mandates, Ghana's future in the next 4 years. Both the new Patriotic Party, the NPP, and the National Democratic Congress, NDC, have released ambitious manifestos outlining their plans for diversity, governance, and also the development. But what do these promises mean for the average Ghanaian?
And how will they address challenges such as inter-ethnic tensions, economic disparity, and youth unemployment? So joining us for an in-depth discussion are two distinguished guests. Our first guest is Joe Jackson. He's an economist, and we also have us joining us later on the program will be Emmanuel Wilson, which we will get onto, and also we have Fiifi Boafo. He is the head of the public affairs at COCOBOD. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joe Jackson. Thank you for joining us this morning. Let's begin with you, an economist. So let's talk about Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia's previous engagement as the central bank governor for Ghana. I'd like to know exactly how this will influence, or this has influenced the campaign on so far, or how it might influence policies should they get elected into office. What's your take, Mr. Jackson?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, the Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia has been always touted as the economic guru, the one who understands the economy. He's written books on the economy. He's been a deputy governor at the central bank. So his economic credentials have been touted as far back as 8 years ago, when the current ruling government was coming to power. Unfortunately, his economic credentials have been tainted by the experience of Ghanaians in the last few years, especially the last 3 years, where the economy has crashed. The exchange rate has gone from 6 cedis to $1 to now over 17 cedis to $1. The interest rates have gone through the roof. As high as 50% is now dropped to 23%. So his economic credentials have been tainted. And in fact, one of the charges that have been laid against Dr. Bawumia was that in spite of all his purported economic credentials and him being the head of the economic management team, Ghana's economy has suffered greatly. And it's been a repeated charge laid against him by the opposition. So at the moment, most people are on the fence where his economic credentials are concerned. He's claimed that he was the driver's mate and not the driver, and hence he didn't have as much influence as he could have had on the economy. The jury is still out on this issue, and we would know whether Ghanaians truly believe that even though he was head of the Economic Management Committee, he did not have the influence required when we go to the polls.
So if you say he said that he was the passenger in this economy, do you think that if they were to get into office, that he has what it takes to design better policies for Ghana to actually bring them out of the economic doldrums that Ghana finds itself currently? Has he got it?
First of all, he didn't say he was the passenger. He said he was the driver's mate. And the driver's mate here is the driver's assistant, is the, if you like, the one who reads the map and so on and so forth. But at the moment, his critics say he doesn't have it. His advocates say, listen, there were a lot more people who had more influence, like the former Minister of Finance, who had a lot more influence and caused the crash in the economic in Ghana's economy. And also, he has pivoted from being an economic guru to now being the champion of digitalization, the evangelist for the digitalization of Ghana's economy. And that is how he's positioned himself now. Because truly it's a difficult one to position yourself as an economic guru when the Ghanaians are suffering greatly in the economy as it is now. We've suffered, 68% of purchasing power has been wiped out in 2.5 years. That's a tough one to take to an election if you're the incumbent vice president.
And very interesting times indeed. Let's set the tone, shall we, and discuss the economy in entirety. I always find it very indicting when vice presidents run for office, right immediately after their tenure. And I find it very interesting that they do. I find it very indicting on the number one citizen or the president. If they do not, after 8 years, you feel like you need to go and run for presidency to fix whatever mistake your first in command did wrong. I find it very indicting on the sitting president. But away from that, let's set the tone really for this conversation in terms of, let's now look at the manifestos and the mandates of the two NPP and NDP, right? Bawumia and Mahama. Let's look at them and look at them in entirety with the backdrop of the economy. Which of which has a stronger manifesto that you think can help steer Ghana to prosperity?
It's interesting. If you're looking for the manifesto that advocates for the most radical changes to the economy, then it's the MPP headed by the former Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. He's advocating for a flat tax. He's advocating for a return to the gold standard. He's making gold and the currency stability a central part of his policy and the manifesto. If you switch around to the NDC, who are in opposition, they are the ones who are actually not offering that dramatic change in economic policy. What they are doing is we will run more efficiently, we will reduce corruption, and we'll take out the nuisance taxes, as they call it.
And what about, you talked about Bawumia, what about Mahama as well? What about his manifesto? Do you see, is it also drastic? I think one of them is calling for austerity measures. Is it Mahama that's calling for austerity measures when it comes to fiscal spending and, and discipline? And what do you make of that move?
Mahama's manifesto is where the economy is concerned is not that dramatic. He's calling for austerity for the first 6 months. He calls it that we should give the government a honeymoon and allow them to find out what is happening. There is an Akan proverb that says that you won't be able to tell the height of the animal except when it is dead. So his attitude has been, give us a 6-month honeymoon to look at the animal, to find out how deep the whole economic hole is, how bad the structures are, so that we can together find out a solution to go forward. He's also advocated for a number of taxes to be reduced. The tax burden is particularly high. I have a challenge with both sides, with both the NDC and the NPP, because all of them are offering a number of freebies. We'll take off this tax, we'll take off that tax. But the challenge is that the public purse is empty as now. And if you take off the taxes, what's going to happen? Are you going to find the revenue to make up the shortfall? In addition, we are in an IMF program now. And I don't know whether we can even take off those after we have signed the IMF program, and we are not out of the IMF program yet.
So I was going to ask you regarding these austerity measures that are being suggested by the opposition, what form they would take. You touched on a few of them, but what tangible form exactly would they take? They would be in form of policies, I'm assuming. How would it affect the people? When the opposition is talking about these austerity measures, have they also taken a sample, do you think, when it comes to other African nations that have gone that direction And are they ready for what it might do to the economy further? We've got instances from here in West Africa where countries have increased tax, increased prices for petrol, crude oil, and all the rest, and it didn't fare well for them. It's been rather bad for these countries. There's also the case of Kenya. So are there samples that the opposition is looking at and saying this could work for Ghana if we were to implement a 6-month austerity measure type of instance?
The most immediate effect of that austerity would be a freeze of government salaries and public sector salaries. Listen, the public sector workers all think and expect that come 7th of January, there'll be a magic wand waved and their loss purchasing power, loss of standard of living would be restored by a new government. That won't happen. And when the opposition asks for an austerity, what they're saying is salaries are costing us up to 50% of all our revenue. We need to put a freeze on that whilst we find out, because you can't run a deficit as high as we used to, because you can't borrow from the international markets anymore. And there's no sense in running a deficit only to pay salaries and to pay interest on debt. And that's why we are in an IMF program now. And the biggest issue is to tell Ghanaians that expect a freeze on salaries. That will be really the thrust of the austerity, whilst they find other ways to fix the economy that is in the doldrums at the moment.
Very interesting times that we see. I mean, Mr. Jackson, it's been wonderful having you join us here, just taking a look at the economy and also the candidates, their manifestos. But we wait to see, hopefully, they're able to take advice and you look at other samples from other West African nations, and whoever goes into power, sticks to the plan and make sure that they steer Ghanaians to prosperity. But Mr. Joe Jackson has been wonderful joining us today on the program. Mr. Joe Jackson is an economist giving us more insights on economy of the nation's economy as it pertains to Ghana's elections.